Hey everybody, we're back here at Streaming Media 2025 in beautiful Santa Monica, California. We're here with this year's show chair, Andy Beach. Andy, tell me a little bit about how you became involved as the chair this year.
Hey, Doug. So not long after I left Microsoft in January, Streaming Media reached out. I've been a longtime fan of the conference, have been in sort of every other iteration of it, and they asked if I would be interested, since I was sort of unaffiliated now, in being the chair. I didn't have to think long about it. I thought it would be a lot of fun to get together and to help sort of program sort of what the topics and conversations were.
And I know we've talked about how much you enjoy this smaller format.
Sure.
I mean, we all go to IBC and NAB and kind of that. It's important, but it's also kind of a meat grinder.
Yeah, it's the big shows end up being like such a slog that it's very hard to make meaningful connections. You're sort of moving from meeting to meeting and demo to demo and other pieces. So there's a lot of value in a smaller show that has both interesting programming, but moments during the day where you can connect. I love the fact that we have sort of both the lunches and the coffee breaks here for those hallway conversations that go on. But then we have networking events that go on at night and a variety of other elements. So you get just as valuable content in the hallways as you do in the panels and the keynotes.
This feels like a more targeted or focused kind of event, more like the salons you kind of see at NAB
Sure.
or IBC, where you're going to like go to just to an Amazon event or just to an Adobe event, but over 2.5 days where you really get to connect with different people in a very specific vertical.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, streaming media is focused a lot around sort of the distribution piece of the equation, but they also recognize that all of the different parts of the ecosystem are sort of in play right now. So you end up having conversations about a little bit of everything, but there is a major focus on sort of delivery, monetization, CDN, the tech that's going to get us into sort of whatever the next phase of distribution looks like overall.
And in specific, we're talking a lot about the tech of AI and how
Yep.
it applies to more efficient pipelines, more efficient everything.
Yeah, what's interesting is, there were a couple of conversations I've had where we didn't bring AI up at all, and then there's been ones where it was AI heavy, and we talked about it. So it's kind of been refreshing that AI, while still a big topic, is just another one of the things that we're looking at, and it's not necessarily dominating, I would say, the topics and discussions were out there. Brett Axler, as a great example, who runs the live operations for Netflix, we talked for a full hour, and AI never came up once as part of the equation. We talked a lot about data because they're a heavy data company for how they deliver things, but they were actually looking at implementing more traditional live operations and network operations functions into it, which really meant more people than they've ever had doing that operationally before. So there's a lot of different unique takes on it. Where AI has come up has absolutely been around sort of automating elements of the workflow for people so that you don't have to have your hands on as many things at one point. You can sort of offload some of it to an AI service, whether that's transcription pieces or monitoring signal for audio loss or video loss or other elements that go into it. It's all about just making sure that you can react to the things that are going to change in either a live workflow or an on-demand workflow that you're going to have to get support with before it goes to air.
Yeah, and one of the things I've seen is a through point here and back in NAB in the spring is there's a real focus on putting AI in the right place, right?
Yep.
Not AI for AI's sake. And, there's been some recent reporting saying that uptake of AI in broader business applications has not been as robust as people might think. But I think what I'm hearing here is that there's more of a let's do it in the right place where it makes the most sense. And it's more of a force multiplier for the staff they already have rather than a replacement for staff. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there's two different pieces at play there, I think, ultimately. I think there was a perception when we were talking about AI even a year ago that there was this one big AI that was going to come in and save all of our workflows, and we were going to push a button and something magical was going to happen. And where we've gotten to in the last year is the reality that it's really lots of little AI functions that get peppered through a variety of the workflows that we're already doing that help lift. And the overall lift of that will be equivalent to sort of what that big one button might have done. But the reality is it's spread out across a variety of teams where it's just helping it support them. Allowing them to focus more on the important pieces and taking some of the redundant tasks out of their hands. And so we are now, because that mindset has changed, we're also seeing people frankly implement more quickly than they were before. I think it's harder to implement when it's that one big thing you keep waiting for it. And when it's lots of little things that are just going to be additive and you know you can connect them together over time, there's less risk to putting it into operation sooner.
Yeah, and I think right now Gen AI is getting all the press.
Sure.
But this really feels like the place where AI can have the most impact on the bottom line. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely. Again, I think there's a lot of different sort of budgetary constraints that go around how much content you can create or how much content you can sort of oversee at any one time. And being able to automate some of those processes frees up people to ultimately create more content than they were previously. I heard another interesting anecdote from my conversation. I had a fireside chat keynote with Renard Jenkins yesterday from I2A2, and one of the things he said, and he is a studio exec from way back, he felt confident that AI was ultimately helping creators more and that it was going to replace studios faster than it replaced an individual in it, because it's arming an individual with all the tools and resources that a studio typically has had to provide to get the quality production value that's there. An individual or even an independent studio can now do with AI what a Hollywood studio would have done, in the previous decades on their own now. So there really is no need for that big infrastructure and the big funding that it took to do that. You can go out on your own and make something that's pretty compelling at a lower cost point.
Well, and it's an extension of that democratization of creation, right? And that's also been something that I've heard from several people here in several different panels, is this idea that YouTube and the creator networks are really kind of the farm system for Netflix, and people are being identified. Obviously, see Mr. Beast goes from obscurity to the biggest guy on YouTube, and now to a Amazon Prime show. And so it feels like that's one of the places where Gen AI in particular, and plus also this data infrastructure AI, can really help make the smaller player play on the bigger field.
Sure, yeah, absolutely. Ben Rellis, in our Monday session, before everything kicked off, we had a industry insights day with a variety of debates and topics. And Ben Rellis, in one of the talks he was giving with Seth Allen, talked about the fact that in sort of the last decade, the creators were more of a farm system where they were looking to bring them up, and the goal of a creator 10 years ago was to get into the studio system. He said now their goal is to just have their own platform and not necessarily to go for that studio viewpoint. So that's not their end result anymore. It's pivoted to more of their own thing. And that's because the tooling is so much better for them to be able to control it, that there is no, again, need to necessarily go for sort of a studio end note as part of what you're doing.
Well, and the studio affiliation then just becomes one piece of their larger pie.
Right.
It's still valuable. It's value for the studios.
It's a great distribution place, but it doesn't have to be the only destination or the only distribution.
So obviously you left Microsoft earlier this year.
Sure.
What have you been working on now?
I started my own consulting business called Alchemy Creations. We're doing a variety of things across the media technology space, particularly around how AI intersects with it. Whether that's helping startups or whether it's advising existing brands around what their AI implementation and roadmap should look like and where it's most valuable for them. That's a lot of what I'm doing. I also have been enjoying being away from sort of corporate overlords and getting a chance to write about the industry from my own perspective without any oversight. And I do that on a Substack that I call Engines of Change.
Outstanding Substack, by the way. You should certainly
Thank
look
you
it up.
very much.
Big fan. One of the things you and I have talked about quite a bit is this, particularly as AI and media intersect, is this idea of ethical application and thinking about it as a support to the creator rather than a replacement for.
Sure.
Is that kind of a focus of what Alchemy's working on?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we feel like both the provenance of the content and the ethics behind how the AI are made are only going to make it healthier and easier to implement long term. When you have questions and uncertainty around sort of how it was sourced and how people were remunerated for the content that are in there, it's just ultimately harder to make a business model that works around it. So we absolutely are working with the large bodies that are out there, whether it's C2PA or the European Broadcasting Union, to think around how data privacy impacts the content, how the rights ownerships and licensing impacts it, and other pieces of the equation, because that again is going to long term make this a more viable product for the ecosystem.
Absolutely. So then, you touched on a couple. What are some of the themes coming out of the show that got you excited or intrigued?
Sure. I think independent studios and creators is a big topic, obviously, because I think they see more immediate value from the changes that are going on in the industry than a large studio ecosystem. I think we've had a lot of great perspectives from international audiences, even though this is really a regional show in North America. We just had a great keynote from Daniel Yaha from Abbott's, which is a LATAM nonprofit around the OTT space, talking about the importance of LATAM in the overall global market. But we've also heard great voices coming out of Europe around similar topics. And then we've also had a wide range of cultural perspectives. We had Jason Harvey this morning give us a talk around BET Plus and how they are empowering Black voices to be storytellers on their platform. So I think it's that variety of perspectives that we're seeing about it that has been most insightful for me. We are all facing the same problems. We all hear similar problems that come from it, but hearing the other pieces and the other regions and even other cultural moments that are touching into the space is very interesting, because that was always the promise of OTT and of streaming in many ways, was that it allowed you to find your audience. And I think the plethora of examples that we saw here are those proof points proving themselves out years later.
Well, and I think one of the very interesting applications, as we look at companies like Adapt, right, where they're working on localization technology and particularly lip syncing and in real time dubbing,
Yeah.
right? I think that's going to be a really interesting audience builder, right? So everybody's been kind of siloed. There's been this big cost expense about moving out to other markets and whether it's worth it. And as that becomes simpler and easier, the creators get more opportunity, more to get a global audience. Would you see that as a trend coming forward?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, the reality is that something as simple as having dubbing services that don't distract from the content and also are more culturally relevant. I think we've had dubbing for a long time, but the dubbing hasn't always been, first of all, it's been a little more arduous to get done. But when we had automated versions of it, it was a little clunky because the translations are never sort of a one-for-one match. They're not necessarily relevant. The great example that I always used when we were at Microsoft was dubbing services from like even 4 or 5 years ago. When you were describing shooting a basketball into a hoop in Polish, it was literally the description of firing a gun at a basketball. And obviously, that's not correct, but it went out that way, and people would just know that they had to account for what it meant. But you're creating stepping stones. You're creating a barrier of entry to enjoying the content. Now that we have large language models that can help contextualize better the translations that are going out there at scale, then we have the ability to tell a more meaningful story and lower those barriers of entry and remove those sort of stumbling blocks from finding new content and finding new audiences. So I can feel, reliant that when I put my voice out there in another language, that someone's going to be able to connect with it faster than they would if they were trying to just read subtitles or they were trying to use a relatively clunky translation.
Well, and that's a great example, I think, too. There's a lot of concern, obviously, about AI replacing jobs, but the best AI really has human in the middle, right?
Sure.
It has human intervention, and so checking in on those translations, refining the model, helping it get better. It's just a different shift in where the responsibility and where the human work is, maybe.
Yeah, and I think there's another component to that as well. There are places where the job simply wouldn't exist. Like we wouldn't necessarily translate, to go back to the dubbing example, we wouldn't go into 15 different languages because it would be cost prohibitive to do it for certain things. But with a lower barrier of entry on the cost side, we're willing to take that risk and potentially do it. So are you replacing a person in an instance where we never would have done it if it were cost prohibitive? But you still now are potentially having a human that has editorial authorship over sort of fact checking that, who is now actually getting a job because of AI that didn't exist before. So I think there's a lot of cases like that that are out there that we're going to continue to discover where as we're making more content, whether it's taking existing content and regionalizing it so that we get a broader audience, or whether it's actually just whole cloth new material that gets created, there are ultimately more jobs than less that are out there. They're just different than the jobs that we have today.
Very similar to the transition from the buggy to the automobile.
Very much so.
Okay. Well, Andy, it's been great chatting with you.
Thanks, Doug.
Thanks for putting on a great show.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
thanks for being here and being part of it. And I appreciate all of the hard work that everybody behind the scenes has put on to make sure that we've had a great show.
Yep. So that's been Andy Beach from Streaming Media 2025 here in sunny Santa Monica, California. We'll see you at the next one.